Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Talking Point on WESN, your content capital. Sean Michael Small here from the beautiful island of Tobago, which is fitting because on Tuesdays we like to speak about pressing issues that's happening on the sister isle. And joining me to speak about one of those issues, we have the Honorable Marvin Gonzalez, Minister of Public Utilities of Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning, Minister Gonzalez.
Hi, good morning, Sean, and good morning to our citizens in the beautiful island of Tobago. I wish I was there right now.
It is actually quite beautiful, but the heat these days, I mean, it's oppressive all around. Might just be 2023, but regardless, you know, I guess we shouldn't complain. Things could be worse. God is still a Trini, and we still are protected from some of the more extreme weather.
And in that context, Tobagonian.
But well, weather now, the water situation in the nation is always something that, you know, we have to pay attention to. And one interesting development in Tobago is the announcement of a new water park. A water park which, as of the reporting, is about 2 months away, or less than 2 months away now, from beginning construction in Tobago. And yet this water park does not have both AMA approval, which is an ongoing concern for the AMA, I believe, with regards to works in Tobago, but also does not have approval from the Water and Sewage Authority. And given the amount of water one would imagine a water park should be used, is this something of a concern yet, or just something that you in the ministry, your subordinates and the authority is just monitoring for now?
Well, we are monitoring. For me personally, it is of serious concern because of the projects and programs that we have started in Tobago to improve the supply of water. Recently, we constructed a number of booster stations in key areas, including the Shervan Road booster station, which was constructed to improve the supply of water to southwest Tobago, that area in Crown Point and what have you, because that is the area that most of your visitors would visit. And during peak hours, you would have over 100,000 visitors coming from Trinidad. They call it a transient population. So that area, there's a water deficit. There's a water deficit on the island. And what do I mean when I say a water deficit? I simply mean that the demand outstrips your supply. So therefore, you engage in water scheduling to distribute water to some of the areas around the island as best as you can. So when your demand outstrips your supply, then communities are placed on a water schedule 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 2 days a week, as the case may be, in order to move the water to other areas that may need it. So Tobago, from the data provided to me, we need about 5 million gallons of water more in order to meet the daily demand for the people of Tobago. And as a result of that, we have undertaken a program to drill for some more groundwater wells. We have recently completed the desilting of the Hillsborough Dam, restoring the dam to its full capacity so that it can start producing more water. Then under the IDB program, we are going to construct a new water treatment plant in Goldsboro in Tobago, which would add an additional 2 million gallons of water per day. All of these projects that we have started so that we can put to bring closer the demand and supply gap so that we can bring the island, or most communities on the island, to closer to a 24/7 supply of water. So when you get news that a water park is going to be constructed, of course, a water park takes large volumes of water. The first question that's going to be asked, or that I would want to know, is that where is this water coming from? So I inquired of the authority whether or not the approval was granted for the construction of that water park, and I was taken aback when I was told that there was no application that was submitted to the Water and Sewage Authority for approval. So therefore, the authority is also in the dark as to where this water is going to come from. It is not that the authority or the or the government is opposed to the construction of any water park. That I want to make that fundamentally clear. It is that the government is concerned that the construction of any water park without the requisite approvals from the authority can impact the supply of water to your domestic customers. Because if you're already grappling with a demand and supply gap, and you are undertaking projects to bring that gap closer so that citizens can have a more consistent supply of water, then any water park that's coming on stream to take the very water that you're bringing on board to supply your guest houses, your hotels, your domestic customers, your schools, and your hospitals, it can have a negative impact on the ability of the Water and Sewage Authority to be able to meet the demand of its daily customers. And that is obviously a problem. So we have not had any application from the developer, and therefore it is of serious concern when such an application is submitted. Of course, given the context that I have just, or the circumstances that I just described, all of that will be taken into consideration, and the authority would now have to work with the developer to find a sustainable source of water to provide to the water park without impacting negatively the customers who require a daily supply of water.
Well, as a follow-up question, because you outlined several programs wanting to try to make up the water deficit as you described it, and I have been here. I was fortunate or unfortunate to be here one year or experience one particular dry season where, it could get pretty harsh for Tobago's water supply and its capacity for at least half of the year, if not the whole year. So we have this deficit. You have plans. The water park has a time scale that was reported to start in 2 months or less than 2 months now, and to be finished in about 18 months. Would your projects that would have tried to get the current demand, to service the current demand, would those projects even be finished in time to try to make up? No, because otherwise the water park is basically going to cut into what already is a deficit. You can't even clear that.
It can't. It cannot. Because, you see, we have to be careful that whilst we seek to bring development, there must be sustainable development. Your development agenda ought not to conflict with any other agenda that you have. And in this particular case, the need for citizens to have a consistent supply of water. Any development that will impact customers getting a consistent supply of water is not sustainable development. And I can tell you that the project that I've already identified, we're already drilling wells in Mary's Hill and Bad Hill and some of those areas. Those wells will come into operation. One of the wells will come into operation in about 2 months' time. And that is to provide water to the people of Southwest Tobago, that area that I just mentioned. All right, the Gouldsboro water treatment plant will come into operation in 1 year's time, around this time next year. All right, and then we are drilling other wells. I expect those wells to come into operation later down this year. Those wells and the additional water that we are bringing on stream, it is not to provide a water park. The people of Tobago, the ordinary citizens of Tobago, we are seeking to improve their supply of water on the domestic grid. So the water that we are looking to bring on stream is to improve the supply of water to domestic and some of our commercial customers. It is not for a water park. And that is the reason why when such an application is made, the authority will sit with the developer to identify a source of water for the water park without impacting WASA's responsibility to provide water to its domestic and other customers.
Well, I then have to ask the hard question of, if their application, the timing of it is impractical,
yeah,
is it that the authority will be unwilling to provide either sufficient amount of water of what they're requesting or any water at all, depending? Because they say they're waiting for to finish their planning and estimates. Don't mind construction is starting in about 7 weeks. So I don't know.
I just find it to be quite curious that you're running ahead with planning your construction of a water park and you don't know where water is going to come from. You don't
Or how
know,
much you need.
or how much you need. Exactly. So that is something that the developers would have to answer for themselves. But I can tell you that our focus as a government and the authority, our focus at this point in time is to improve the supply of water to domestic customers. All right. This is a problem that plagued Tobago for years. And I just find it a bit unfortunate that you have a development that can conflict with our program to improve the supply of water. Let me give you an example, Sean. So there's a water park in Chaguaramas, in
Yes.
West, right? That water park is fed by water coming from the Toka Valley system. I'll just use that as an example of what I'm referring to, because here we have a real example so that the people of Tobago who are listening and viewing this program can understand what I'm talking about. So this water park is being fed with large volumes of water from the Toka Valley system on a daily basis. Portable water. High quality portable water treated, and that water park is fed from water from the Toka Valley system. As you come out of Chaguaramas, heading into Port of Spain, there are a number of communities in Caranage, in Scorpion, in some of those areas in Constabulary Street, and you know, that area. And when I came in as minister, a number of these communities, they did not have a consistent supply of water because the water was being diverted to ensure that the water park has a daily consistent supply to the detriment of your domestic customers. And we had to take a policy decision to alter the balance from what goes into the water park and what goes to your domestic customers, because it does not make sense that your domestic customers, the thousands of people who depend on water just to bathe, to wash their clothes, to prepare themselves, to go to school and what have you, that their well-being have to be impacted because the water, or most of the water, is being sent to a water park. So we had to we took the harsh decision of altering the balance to ensure that the water being produced at the Toka Valley water treatment plant, that there's a healthy balance where the citizens in Caranage and the surrounding communities get their daily supply of water, and to ask the water park to engage in water conservation practices on the plant itself so that customers who live right outside of the water park are not unduly impacted. So if you don't manage this properly in Tobago, learning from the Trinidad's experience, if you go into Tobago with that kind of planning and development, I can tell you it will impact the supply of water to domestic customers in Tobago in a very, very bad way. And it's going to reverse all of the progress that we have made over the last year.
Well, Water for All is a frequent campaign slogan, a campaign promise.
1990s. That was
Used, yeah,
1990s.
all throughout, right? And of course, we know it's been an issue, but I just have to ask, given the fact that it's something that's important to people all over the country, I don't think there's any one area that is completely satisfied with it.
Yeah.
Did the THA, just to ask, I think the answer might be self-apparent, but the THA did not consult at all or speak to the ministry with regards to plans for this development?
No. So there was no formal communication from the THA. I was taken by surprise. I read about it in the newspapers. I asked questions, but there was no formal communication from the developer, no formal communication from the Tobago House of Assembly on the plans to construct this water park. So I'm hoping that we can engage in some meaningful discussions, because I don't think the THA will want a development that will reverse the improvements that we have made in water supply on the island over the last year. And we have made tremendous improvements. And Sean, I can tell you that during this dry season, the West Tobago, for the very first time, the water scheduling was not imposed, or water rationing was not imposed in West Tobago. The booster improved the supply tremendously. The desilting of the Hillsborough Dam would have also provided a consistent supply of water to the people on that part of the island. And next week, Tuesday, I will be in Tobago to commission a 7.2 kilometer, 48-inch pipeline, which will move additional water from Signal Hill into that zone in by the airport and some of in Tobago West area. So there's a lot of work that is taking place, and we do not wish for that momentum to be stopped or to be reversed by development that came about without proper planning and without proper collaboration with the necessary statutory agencies. And that is my concern.
Well, my final question for you would be, just given all that has happened, has there been any consideration for any sort of policy shift or regulatory shift in order to prevent this sort of thing from potentially happening? Or what happened with regards to the Tucker Valley water supply to Northwest Trinidad to kind of formally, cut that off from ahead?
Let me tell you this, right? Just discussion, meaningful discussion. It is not that you oppose. I mean, a water park would attract tourism. It will be a tourism boost. It will create employment. So it is something that is good for Tobago because it generates a lot of economic activities. But it must be balanced and it must be measured. It must not negatively impact another sector. All right. So going back to the Tucker Valley experience, the water park is located next to the ocean, the Gulf of Paria. And what should have been done is that the developer there, perhaps the same for Tobago, should have been advised to construct a small desalination plant that can produce 300,000 gallons of water per day from the ocean in order to supply the water park. You understand? And don't take your expensive, high-quality portable water to go into a water park when you can take that same water to increase and improve the supply of water to your domestic customers. I'm just using that as an example.
Yes. So you're not saying to fully make it portable from the ocean, but to just
you don't
make
need
it fresh enough.
You don't need high quality portable water to feed into a water park. So on this occasion, that park is located next to an ocean. You have these small package desal plants that a lot of companies around the world make. You can install that package plant next to the ocean, next to the water park, extract the water from the ocean, treat it, and you feed you supply your water park for the number of activities that you're going to have in that water park. So here you have a water park, as opposed to taking water from your expensive portable water that should really go to your domestic customers. You take that water from the ocean, you treat it, and you have your activities there in that water park without impacting customers. In the same way, I am saying I don't know the location of that proposed water park in Tobago. But if it is,
I believe it is near the sea, actually, Friendship Estate.
So if it is next to the ocean, the developer can look at, acquiring a small package desalination plant. They're not expensive. They are very, very affordable now because of the technology and what have you. And they can install a package desal plant next to the ocean there and use that as the feedstock to supply the water park for water. And there you have a water park with sustainable water from the ocean without impacting the domestic customers in Tobago. So I'm just using that as an example in how when you work and you talk to developers, you can advise them as to how they can get the water without impacting the other sectors.
Well, Mr. I want to thank you again for coming on Talking Point here to speak about this issue, and also for all the work that you do. Quite an active job you're doing.
Yeah,
I should say, and very appreciative, because we kind of take it for granted, the challenges to the water supply in the nation.
A lot of challenges, and I know we didn't come here to talk about the situation in Trinidad, but if you would allow me, I can tell you, last week was very challenging for the authority as a result of the emergency that took place at the Carney water treatment plant, which impacted 250,000 customers in North Trinidad, all right? And I can tell you, Sean, that I remain very close to the workers on the ground, during this very tough 3 days, right, where everything was done to ensure that that this rupture was addressed so that the long duration that could have potentially occurred with people in North Trinidad not having water. It was shortened to 3 days. And that is as a result of workers working around the clock for 3 days. Some went for 48 hours without sleep. Some didn't even have a shower for 48 hours. And I saw the dedication and professionalism of these WASA workers, and I want to publicly commend them for it. And that to me shows that we are turning the corner where we, the approach and the level of professionalism and dedication by the WASA workers to the job, understanding that the citizens are depending on them to get their supply of water. I felt a sense of pride. However, on the other end, I felt a sense of sadness to see the attacks against these WASA workers by members of the public and members of the media too, in editorials, criticizing WASA for an incident it did not contribute to. All right, a leak can occur anywhere in any water utility company. And when you are in a surgery room dealing with a health emergency, you don't attack the healthcare workers. You don't attack doctors. And I just thought it was a bit unfortunate that members of the public and members of the media engage in attacking and criticizing WASA workers when in fact they should be commended for what they have done over the last 3 days, because we were advised to construct a new line which would have taken 7 days. It meant the North Trinidad would have been out of water for 7 days, and we decided to go against that and say, no, we are going to address this particular problem within a 3-day period, within the shortest time possible, and that was done. And whilst all of that was happening, the Mount Hope Medical Complex remain in operation, the dialysis center remain in operation, the airport authority remain in operation. It happened in the midst of CARICOM activities. We were trucking water to the Diplomatic Center, to the Hyatt, to Bricks, and all to Hilton Hotel, ensuring that CARICOM activities were not impacted by this emergency. And all of that happened because of the dedication of the workers of the authority. And I want to salute them for that.
Well, Mr. Minister, I will admit, I am not ashamed to admit, I was one of the members of the media that had questions for WASA's response, but I very much appreciate the communication of the work that went in so that we could understand. This is one of the things that I hope for on Talking Point, that we could get the information so we're not left to ask questions and speculate to our own devices. And thank you for including that this morning. Because it's good to know that perhaps the new WASA or the transformed WASAs might be closer than we think.
Yeah, of course. And you see, transformation is not only about sending people home, changing over money. Transformation, the citizens will only measure transformation when water starts to flow through their taps consistently. So whatever you do in the background, you change your management, you change your structure, you change your this, you change your that. If it does not result in citizens getting a consistent supply of water, then the transformation will mean absolutely nothing. All right. This incident there, the reason why it was difficult is because it's an old concrete line that was constructed in 1970s. They no longer make those lines. Those are pipes. WASA doesn't have them in stock. No utility company ever used them. And what made it challenging was the fact that you now have to use an iron line and fuse it into this concrete line, using flanges and material to fuse iron into concrete. That made the task very, very, and then you have to bolt it down with a truss block with concrete to ensure that the level of pressure in the line, it will not cause the line to rupture again. So it's a very, very difficult undertaking that require round the clock, operation. And that made the job a bit challenging. It is not one of the ordinary rupture that you would occur on a daily basis. So, of course, you wouldn't go into all of these things, and that's the reason why WASA decided to have 2 press conferences on the site so that members of the media could see it themselves, so that they can communicate the information to members of the public, so that they themselves can understand the challenge in conducting the repairs. So apart from the regular press releases, 2 press conferences were held, all in an effort to communicate and to be very transparent with the population.
Well, Minister, we have kept you a little bit over time, but thanks again for communicating with us. Yeah. And good luck to you and the Water Sewage Authority, because at the end of the day, water is life, and I hope that the challenges can be overcome soon so that most, if not all, of the country could experience water for all.
So the new, they're going to be constructing a new bypass line, and that line is going to be completed, in 7 days.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thank you, Minister.
All the best. Be good. Nice.
You too, sir. Good luck, sir.
Thanks.
Folks, that was Minister, the Honorable Marvin Gonzalez, Minister of Public Utilities, there giving us an update. It's good to hear from the officials themselves. I myself, I'll admit that I have not seen the recordings of those press conferences. So it is good, though, that Minister Gonzalez, I would say he's one of the ministers who I see putting in the work and putting in the effort to deal with a complex situation. And I cannot fault him for the efforts of what he's doing. And hopefully we will see the results, which is key, but still thankful that some work is being done. Of course, there's other things we could say, but we'll save that. We should take a break right now. When we return, we'll get into more topics with the day's daily review after this.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And I just had the Minister of Public Utilities to speak about both Tobago's water deficit and the ongoing concern of the new planned water park at Friendship Estate, which there's no estimates for the amount of water that the water park might even request, or if the water supply in Tobago would be able to meet the need, despite the fact that work is being done to try to make up for the demand or the shortfall of what is demanded by Tobago's water needs, that is for the population's consumption. And the minister is not necessarily prepared to move some of that supply for commercial endeavor, at least without some sort of communication or consultation. So it was an interesting discussion. Also, the minister informed me about the effort, the work that took place with regards to the northern side of the country's water disruption last week, of which I was critical of. But in hindsight, with the information the minister provided, I am somewhat pleased with regards to how the situation was resolved and the steps taken to resolve it in the shortest possible time. Now, with that said, we do have other things to get into this morning. So let's now start off today's daily review. And the first topic that I'd like to get into this morning is something that is not necessarily new. And when I say not necessarily new, we've heard similar things before with regards to the country's credit rating. Now, I believe it was either last year or the year before. Actually, it might have been both years, both of the last 2 years. It has come up with regards to our rating from S&P being BB plus or BBB plus, which my associate Karen, she does not necessarily think of that as a good sign, because usually that rating means that, well, we're in the junk bond category, basically. However, yesterday a report came in, or it should be in today's papers. So that's S&P. Moody's Investor Services also now has affirmed a rating for TNT at BA2, which actually is under BB plus. I can't remember if S&P dropped us down to BB, which means that technically our rating is going down. However, I believe last year S&P moved us to a stable rating. We were moved up to a stable rating. This year, Moody's has moved us from stable to positive, despite the fact that we have a BA2 rating, which is the second or the middle category for junk bonds, or junk. We're in the junk's high yield bracket. Now, this was a concern of Karen. It's also a little bit of a concern of mine. The Minister of Finance would have us think that, look, okay, the outlook is looking up. They're saying that now we've stabilized and now things are positive. And that might be true. The question is, however, to what extent is our ratings for our credit worthiness affected? Are we just going to be a high yield, potentially high risk or moderate risk creditor or debtor? So, and the rating so far seems to be dropping down steadily, incrementally year by year. Because I believe before the last couple of years, we were not in the BBB plus or BA1, BA2 sphere. We were at a higher rating that would have said something different with regards to the credit worthiness of our borrowing. So it's interesting to see. Of course, again, we've acknowledged before on Talking Point, the Minister of Finance cannot literally come out and spell doom and gloom for the economy and be negative Nancy, because that will hit investor confidence, that will hit, local spending confidence. This is how you get things like with regards to the Great Depression, where confidence affects the markets, affects spending, affects saving, etc., etc. Consumer confidence tanks. And the movement of liquidity, the cash flow within the economy starts to slow down as people start to get worried and think, well, I need to keep more for myself in reserve in case anything goes wrong. And then you get enough of that, and also you get, investment drying up, whether it's local investment, because again, we're holding on to our money, so we're not putting it back into capital, into businesses, and foreign investment might also reduce, and then you get into a recession or even a depression. So I understand he can't be negative Nancy, but the flip side is it's difficult to pair the always positive outlook or almost always positive outlook of the Minister of Finance when we get neutral or slightly negative responses to our economic position. Granted, COVID, inflation, global inflation from the war in Ukraine and other factors, cost of shipping challenges, etc., etc. There have been a lot of issues, and even before COVID, we've had economic challenges. If we could remember that far back, there were serious economic challenges. So I get it, to some extent, I will say the minister is right to have a positive outlook. It's not all bad with regards to the management, but it's still difficult to pair the ratings or the reduction, the steady reduction, slow as it is, with the positive outlook. Next story that I want to hit. This is a minor one, but one that I think we don't necessarily want to forget, and that is, of course, the situation with the scrap iron dealers in TNT. Now, for those who might not remember, scrap iron dealing has been a controversial industry because there was a point in time, and I'm not sure if it's over, but generally speaking, I no longer have the access to copper lines in my vicinity to know if they're going to be stolen or not. But there was a high degree of copper wire theft, which disconnected people's phone lines. Some of my colleagues at wesn had that experience. The station itself had that experience. So telecommunication companies are moving towards fiber optics, more digital technology. So they're moving away from copper, but that's a transition. And that's just one aspect with regards to phone lines being stolen. And it seemed as though it was a crime that could not stop. So that, among other things, put the scrap iron dealers in questionable circumstances. And the government decided to institute a ban, and now they need an export license. And ironically, the president of the Scrap Iron Dealers Association, Alan Ferguson, he cannot get an export license. And that is impeding his business. Now, he has said that he follows all the rules, and he is complaining that the government is punishing him because it seems as though, again, there's minute details on the paperwork, and the question is it bureaucrats being they're being too strict with adhering to the rules, or is it that, look, at the end of the day, this is official documentation and we need it to a certain caliber, to a minimum standard, because this is going to be public records, a legal document in case of whatever happens, whether a criminal investigation or a lawsuit or just an audit, regulatory checks, etc., etc. We can't have this done any old how. It takes me back to the questions with regards to the EBC, and to what extent is it the bureaucrats being too strict, or to what extent is it the individuals now making the application being inexperienced, or potentially even taking things for granted? So that's an interesting thing in TNT. It's not always going to be, well, the government fault, or the public administrator's fault, or the clerk's fault, or the girl who gave me the wrong directions fault. To some extent, we also have to realize that we do have a responsibility as well. So now, as a member of the media, The question is, where does culpability truly lie? Now, all we've heard is Mr. Ferguson cannot get a license. He has not, as far as I'm aware, disclosed other members of his association or other scrap iron dealers who might not be a part of his association having difficulty getting the license. So, if it's a single incident, again, is it a bureaucrat? Is it the rules? Is it the system? Is it the government? Is it just filling out the form neater, more accurately? Which, the flip side is, as we saw in the local government election nomination day applications, sometimes it was an official signature from a justice of the peace that does you in. It's not even your doing. But it is what it is. One more reason why digitization, hopefully, if done and implemented effectively, we don't have to have handwritten legal documents, outside of your signature to confirm that it is you. Handwritten official documents is not the most efficient way, and that could be really and truly part of the problem or the solution, and we just have to wait for that rollout. Next story. Wanted to look at crime. I know Mondays are usually crime days, but they had two interesting crime stories. Interesting is relative. The first one is legitimately interesting and potentially somewhat funny. And that is the fact that nothing too elaborate. A man and a woman, a 20-year-old woman and a 40-year-old father, they're looking to sell a car. They took the car to people who they thought were customers. And apparently it was an ambush where there were two men that they were going to meet. Two other men ran out from the bushes and announced a robbery. The chain of events I'm not entirely clear on, because the father was apparently opening up the hood to show the men, the opening up the bonnet to show the men, I guess, the engine of the car to see how it's running, or, the state of the engine. When the gunmen, the second pair came out of the bushes, and the daughter, apparently, who was in the car, well, she drove off, knocked down one of the bandits, or ran over. I'm not too sure exactly, which is the case. But the point is, she hit one of the bandits, and then she crashed the car into a wall. Now, bandits did shoot at the car. It's not reported that the young lady was hit by any bullets. But then the bandits apparently ran off. I guess because the car crashed into the wall, it's kind of difficult to steal a car that might be damaged. There was nothing left for them to get there, so they escaped. It's funny that, basically the bandits come to attack you and you manage to clip one with your vehicle. However, I don't know if it's something that I would advise, because based on what was reported, the father was not in the car. So potentially the father would be left behind in a dangerous situation. The bandits opened fire, which is always a potential case. It's not cops. They don't have to worry about, use of force or anything like that. So they're shooting after you in retaliation. They might not care about damaging the car at that point. And then, of course, now if you crash the vehicle and you also are stuck in that situation with dangerous individuals who may be willing, and in this case, displayed a willingness to use violence. So on one hand, there's a little bit of irony or humor in one of the bandits getting hit by the car. But the flip side is, it's a big risk doing that, especially when you're potentially leaving somebody behind, a family member. It is a big risk. I don't know, maybe the father told her to go, or maybe that's just what they have decided amongst themselves, how they will respond to that kind of situation. But regardless, it's still a big risk. So it's just one of those things where, and we've had Ashraf Ali on, and he said this multiple times, do not go meeting people in random places to sell your valuable belongings. The police station should be more or less willing to oversee your transaction. And if the police officers are not willing, I would then suggest, this is me personally now, to go to another police station, because we're not talking about selling a pie or selling a rubber slippers. We're talking about selling a car. So if the closest police station is not being cooperative, there isn't a police officer that is willing to maybe, keep an eye on things for you, maybe be present, etc., be cooperative, right? Or even willing to allow you to do it in front of the station, go to the second nearest. Because this is the unfortunate potential outcome of doing it on your own in a parking lot, or in this case, on a random road next to some bushes with individuals who apparently you have met online. So it's not take the extra steps, especially since technically it should not be costing you anything more than the gas it would take you to get there, right? And this applies not just for motor vehicles, but for any item that could be robbed from you at gunpoint. Cell phones, clothing, backpack, whatever it is that you're selling, electronics, game consoles, do that at a police station, right? And then potentially, once you find that police station, at least okay, I could go there, this officer, keep it safe, and prevent these things from happening. The story after that is a little bit more, well, as much as there was violence in the previous story. My next story is a little bit more alarming, and it's nothing too long. Basically, there was a shooting. Two men in a Mercedes-Benz in Maraval were shot at. I believe it was parked along the side of the road in Maraval, and I believe it was two gunmen. I could be wrong, but two gunmen basically shot multiple rounds into the parked vehicle. Eyewitness reports or reports say that the gunfire was aimed at the passenger side. So they were shooting from the passenger side, basically, the passenger's door. And they utilized 5.56 millimeter caliber ammunition, which is basically rifle caliber ammunition, the type that you would use in guns imported from North America. AK-47s, not 74s, would use 7.62s, different ammunition. Either one is very dangerous because of its ability to penetrate objects. So it'll definitely go through a car door. There was no chance of the car door stopping that. But then the driver, I believe, was also hit. The passenger was declared dead. The driver was taken to hospital and is in critical condition. He might not have been in the direct line of fire, but at the end of the day, with weaponry like that, he is alongside the passenger. He is in the danger zone, and he got hit. Apparently, it was only, and I say this relatively speaking, only 22 shells were recovered. It implies that potentially they did not just spray down the car, or that could be wrong. But at the same time, it's not necessary to do that to kill an individual. And that goes to show my concern about this type of weaponry. It's not about the automatic fire. Yes, that has its own dangers, but the real issue is the penetrative power of these high-powered rifles. Because it could have potentially gone through the passenger door, through the passenger, through the driver's side door, and keep going into the shops on the other side of the car. And if there were any pedestrians, any patrons in those stores, or people working in those stores, those bullets potentially could have gone straight through, maybe not through two human bodies, but then, of course, if you have a bullet that misses, it's in the vicinity of, it'll go through potentially the two car doors and keep going. You don't have to have the full force to cause an injury, or depending on who is hit, like an elderly person or a young child, it could still be lethal. So that's always been my concern with those type of weaponry. the spray and pray just makes it worse, but it's the penetrative power. So when we see that there's potential gun violence on high trafficked roads in urban areas, this is very much my concern, and hopefully something will be done, because as much as the AK-47s, that also has the same concerns coming from Venezuela. All of these guns coming through legal ports of entry being smuggled in have that same capacity as well, for all intents and purposes, right? So it's just one more thing to look at. I can't really say there's much that we, the people, could do about it, except for demanding results for this gun violence situation. Last story, quick. And again, the humor might be relative in this one as well. I showed a clip of the Minister of National Security being concerned about how an Express article will paint TNT to the international community. And that Express article was about the potential, well, the rape allegations made by one individual who was an illegal immigrant detained at the helipad or the helicopter facility in Chagaramas. Well, I did wonder there are other things that could potentially, besmirch the reputation of TNT. One, of course, is our asylum laws or regulations or policies, which the UN Refugee Agency has now commented on. So the UN is looking at that specifically. And time will tell with regards to the reporting, with regards to the UNHCR, what will come out of that, because they just said that they're concerned over the implications. But the other thing that was quite amusing, and this might, again, the humor might be relative. The new Ministry of Education's change in hair policy has made international news and is an article online, I'm looking at it right now, on Fox News. I don't know how that would play out in the international community, but I'm just saying there are eyes on us. There are many eyes on us, and they're watching many different topics and perspectives about TNT. We can't take it for granted. So perhaps we should have a little bit more care, maybe with how we speak publicly. Just saying. Folks, we have to take a break for news on the hour. When we return, we open up the phone lines. We'd like to hear from you, the viewer. If you want to talk, if you have concerns about Tobago's water supply or anything else that I've mentioned so far, we can get into that after WSN's news on the hour. Coming up next.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Sierra Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. 200 Venezuelan nationals detained during a joint exercise in St. James. Former Education Minister claims various denominational school boards are under threat. Regionally, boat with over 200 migrants missing off Canary Islands. And internationally, teacher wounded following a stabbing incident at Tewkesbury School in England. Now for the details. 200 Venezuelan nationals were detained during a joint exercise in St. James on Sunday. The detainees were held as they partied at a popular bar along the Western Main Road. Officials carried out the raid between 1:30 a.m. and noon yesterday and interviewed the attendees who were reportedly guests at a birthday party hosted by the manager of the establishment and another business owner. The group included people between the ages of 17 to 46 years old. Police said several of the male individuals held were dressed as women. Former Education Minister Dr. Tim Gopi Singh is warning the various denominational boards of Trinidad and Tobago that their constitutionally enshrined authority, autonomy and independence to manage the hundreds of primary and secondary schools under their purview may now be under serious and dangerous threat. This after the Rowley Cabinet has received the report of the committee it commissioned last year to review and recommend changes to the conduct of secondary entrance assessment and the Concordat. Originally, Spanish rescuers are searching waters of the Canary Islands for a boat carrying at least 200 African migrants who went missing more than a week ago. The aid group Walking Borders says the fishing boat sailed from Kafounté, a coastal town in southern Senegal that is roughly 1,700 kilometers from Tenerife. The group says many children are on board, Spain's EFE News agency reports. Two similar boats carrying dozens more people are said to be missing. Internationally, a male teacher has been taken to the hospital with a suspected stab wound following an incident at Tewkesbury School in England. The school in Gloucestershire remains in lockdown. Police say they were called just after 4 a.m. and a teenage boy has been arrested. The school says other pupils remain safe and well. Tewkesbury is a state school for 11 to 18-year-olds. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's official spokesman expressed his sympathies with the individual who has been injured and with the staff and pupils of the school, who would obviously be extremely concerned. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I am Sarah Ali. Thanks for watching.
On the next episode of Nicole Larson Live, living in victory every day.
They have this burning desire to ask the question and they're just not asking it.
My youngest daughter had an incident, not really an incident, but a concern at school one time where she said, "Mommy, I don't want you to pick me up anymore." And I said, "Why?" She's like, "Because the kids keep asking me, what happened to your mommy's skin? And every day I go to school, they're like, what happened to your mommy's skin?" And I went to the car and I cried.
What studies have shown is that in general, stress, and that is metabolic as well as physiological stress on the body, can lead to the onset and worsening of autoimmune disorders.
I know how cruel the world could be when they see me. Would I be deemed worthy? Would they allow me into the spaces that I wanted to be?
It's harder when no one is clapping, but clap a little louder for yourself during those times. Anything is possible if you have the mindset and the desire to do it.
An encore of Nicole Larson Live, living in victory every day. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. and Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. on WESN.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, now is the time that the phone lines need to be open. And forgive me, of course, I was so intent on starting off the show with my interview with Melissa Gonzalez this morning that I forgot to mention my co-host Keaton Shaw. He is still recovering, unfortunately, from his illness. So we hope that he recovers soon. He should be okay. It's nothing too serious, folks, so don't be too alarmed. But he wasn't able to join me this morning or to host AM Prime. So we wish him well. But of course, phone lines have to be open because we need to hear from you, the viewer. So I believe we have a caller.
Hello?
Hi, Petty Valley. Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning, Sean.
Morning,
Sean,
morning.
I want to applaud Marvin Gonzalez this morning, the minister, for coming on the show this morning. You see, sometimes when you do have clarity, according to him, I was shocked too when the media and citizens and everybody was castigating, including yourself. And you, this ball, when you don't get information, you speculate. But in this case, He was giving out press conference left, right, and center, updating citizens what was happening there. That is an emergency. In his opinion, it would have took 7 days. That took 3 days. And an emergency, people will be inconvenienced. No two ways about it. If you have an accident on the highway, it will be piled up or traffic. It will happen. So I didn't understand what was instead of complain about this. You know, and I'm glad he explained himself, and I'm glad you could interact with him and understand what's going on with that. Having said that, I think the idea with using the water from the sea, I think he said think about it. It's a brilliant idea for them water parks. I don't know if the Tobago could look into it, but what I'm seeing, they're not having discussions. They have to sit down on each side and talk to one another. It seems like the Tobago side just doing their own thing and don't want to have anything to do with Trinidad. That is in my opinion. Sit down, talk, and they could have a good solution. That seawater is a brilliant idea. That's my contribution this morning, short. Have a nice day.
Thank you, caller. Well, the thing is, and for better or worse, it's a strange catch-22. On one hand, Minister Gonzalez is probably one of he has one of the better public perceptions of any politician, at least from me, right? At least from me. I have seen him do more, speak more in what I think is good faith, and he has not really had any controversies to be negatives against him per se. The problem is WASA is not the minister, right? The reputation of the minister and the reputation of WASA are two very different things. And the one thing with regards to Minister Gonzalez is the time frame of getting WASA on track. To be fair to him, it is an uphill battle and it is a challenge. And I am glad at least that we are continuing to see him showing progression. With regards to the using the seawater for the water parks, I'll just say this. If the water parks have to buy the desalination equipment themselves, that is an expense that the developer might not want. And they will just say, well, why I can't just get water from the government? Now, maybe the government should foot the bill, or maybe not. That might need a policy decision moving forward for things like that, for utility like that, right? Because water is not metered. So I don't necessarily know what the charges are for a water park. We have a caller from Chaguanas. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Morning, caller.
Yes, with respect to the water abstraction and water distribution, I think that is the sole responsibility of WASA under law. All water belongs to WASA. So setting up desalination plants and so is a big exercise. You have to get EMA permit and land allocated, and you have to get the sea floor and all this kind of thing, especially in Tobago. I'm not saying that an easy task, especially the marine flora in Tobago. The other thing is Point Lisas is a spent economic zone. They don't even have enough gas if they want to make the plants in there profitable. So the thing I am concerned with, as an alternative to the economic zone in Point Lisas, private sector industries will have to emerge to fill that gap. What is the planning for water for supply as private industries come on stream? And one of the things I'm worried about is government should take the initiative to create a zone for about a $50 billion investment from private investors, where they have all the facilities, roads, water, electricity, garbage collection, banking, insurance, everything, as part of the operations inside that facility, where all the manufacturing takes place with local produce coming from Trinidad, or at least a threshold of only 10% must originate from outside. And that is a model which is used in South Africa. And there's a guy called Aliko Dangote. He's investing $21 billion as an investor in building a new oil refinery. I think Trinidad has space to invite a new oil refinery being built by one of these fellas with a purchase of oil from Guyana to supply the refinery to operate. Now, or even so, to revamp the existing refinery with an investor like him. The thing is, we need to go further abroad. Now, one of the problems with our ideology in Trinidad is once we go into entrepreneurship and we see some profit, we start to spend the profit on luxury. That is the first failure. Men like Dangote, with all the billions they own, they don't enjoy any luxury like we would imagine when you talk to them, when you hear them in interviews and so. Now, the other thing is this government could find money to pay for rentals for buildings and so. And they cannot find money to set aside a $20 or $30 million to support local entrepreneurs in a little zone where things like bottling, sauces, seamstress, tailoring, and other small trades could be done on a scale where they could export some of the products to the Caribbean islands or outside of the Caribbean region. So that is something we have to look at, which is another area. A South African country has become an economic powerhouse in using strategies like that. So the thing is,
all right, caller, I might have to cut you there because I think we have another caller waiting as well. I don't know if you could wrap it up really quick. All right, thank you, caller. So I'll respond to because the previous caller had a lot to say, so I'll respond to that. But do we have another caller from Shogunas?
Yep. Hello,
Morning, Professor.
I have a slight problem with the speaker before the last. He made a very good contribution, except he said Tobago doesn't want to listen to Trinidad. But what he don't realize, there is no Trinidad government entity. There's a government of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
So they have to listen to that. Not to Trinidad.
Yeah.
Trinidad have no jurisdiction over Tobago. It is the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And then you made a point about the Minister of Finance have to put a positive outlook. I don't agree with that. He has to have a realistic outlook. Because having a positive outlook, many times they hide the problems. And these problems increase and increase and increase until they become impractical. Which brings me to your guest speaker this morning. Because he did the same thing with WhatsApp. Nobody is trying to find out what is the problem with WhatsApp. The Parliament came up with a solution, but up to now, nobody can see what was the technical reports on which this was based. And this is the fundamental of our type of government. The politicians provide oversight. They have to get the public servants' views first. Of course, they can change it. But that public service view is there. Because if you look at the recommendations that was made by that parliamentary committee for WhatsApp, it makes no sense. They name a set of problems, but nowhere they say how they get those problems except for one. That is political interference. And in the recommendations, nothing was done to deal with that. Any questions?
One thing though, your comment on what I said about the Minister of Finance, I didn't say that he was being positive. At least that was not my intention. I was saying he shouldn't necessarily be negative or overly negative, or the risks of him being negative. Yes, I actually, the point of what I was saying was I take issue with him being always positive. So I more or less see it. Right, I see it that way. It should be realistic, manage our expectations, but not be all everything is great and fine and we don't exactly know what's going on.
And fine, I am not wrong with that.
True, exactly. True. All right, Professor. Okay, I'm sorry, but I have another call on the line waiting.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Barataria, we have on the line with us. Good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, calling from 7th Avenue, Malik. Also, in this area, we don't have any water since Sunday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they said the water was coming back from Saturday. But also, Hello?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Don't listen to the TV.
To highlight something concerning
Yes.
diversifying the economy. They're talking about ship repairs and whatsoever the case may be, this government. But yet, we have a shipyard down Shagarama's Caribbean Dockyard and Engineering Services that the government has taken over from CLICO about 3 years now. They haven't done anything concerning with this dockyard moving forward with the workers or infrastructure, and be it May, they sent home over 95% of the workers for 3 months with no pay, calling it furlough. You guys did highlight it in the beginning, so I guess this is me bringing it back to your attention. They call it furlough and they sent home everybody, 95% of the workers with no pay. This ship repair yard, and they're talking about this diversifying the economy, and a shipyard can bring in millions of US dollars. So who knows what's going to happen with these workers at the end of August the 30th, from June the 1st to August the 30th, with no pay. So this is something also I wanted to highlight on your program also.
Yes. Thank you, caller.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I guess, all right, if that's it, it seems as though I have another call from Shogunas, so I'll respond to that point after this call. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning. Sorry to call back.
Morning.
I just listened to the professor saying that WASA doesn't have any reasons for why it is in the state it's in. I want to let Professor know that London School of Economics under the former administration did a lot of work into recommendations for WASA to become efficient and profitable operations. I also wrote my MBA on privatization in WASA, for which I was awarded a distinction, and I was asked to upgrade it, but I couldn't afford the upgrade because, I needed the time to work to take care of my family. So there are lots of things in that study too, which is completely divergent to what is being spoken about WASA right now. And I'm sorry that it is not a document that could be used to assist WASA in the way they are going, because this took 2 years to compile. And, there's a lot of data in it, actual data on the financials and so. So, Professor, that there is work that was done on WASA. It's just that when the work is done, nobody pays attention to it. Thanks. So I just call back to let you know that I don't want to talk too much.
Sure. Thank you, caller. No, that's fine. I think it's a good point. It's difficult because you always hear a lot of the sensational stuff, but you don't necessarily get, when you get these incremental upgrades or improvements or advancements. We don't, it doesn't make news as well. And there's always some bacchanal that takes the attention. And Talking Point is unfortunately not necessarily immune to that phenomenon either. We might try not to be, but there's always something else. We have a caller from Dabadi. Good morning.
So, wonderful program as usual. I want to compliment the Minister of Finance for a wonderful job he's doing. And I think that the information coming out from Moody's this morning was excellent for the country. I think a lot of us need to stop looking back at what the UNC did and what the PNM did and what NARA did and that kind of thing. Let's be more patriotic and think about country now. Please. I want to find out, though, I wish I had the opportunity to ask the minister this morning, who gave the approval for the water park?
Well, with regards to what? Which approval? Because EMA and WASA has not.
Potable water for the park.
Is this
and denying people in the
Carnage area? Yes.
Area in the west potable water. I mean, it is ridiculous that they would use thousands of gallons of water for a water park, and people suffering for water. That is ridiculous, you know. So, and I don't know if CDA did it, but I guess WASA would have done it. And
to some extent, right?
Caller, you have information that could help WASA. WASA is under the throat with water, you know. WASA is drunk already, you know. So I think anybody having information that could help us, I think the minister is on the right direction with respect to that whole restructuring, but it needs to come faster though.
Yes.
Nice program. I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, caller. Yes, I agree with that. It would be great if WASA's restructuring could come faster, but I think the problem is the politics of WASA. There's politics in water. That's between the political parties campaigning against each other. And then there's politics in WASA. And that's partially the unions, and that's just partially the entity that is WASA as it exists. Similar, I would argue, in my humble opinion, to what we might have seen, the phenomenon with the OWTU and Petrotrin, which is not that long ago. We have a caller from San Fernando. I think this should be the last call for the morning, so I could at least try to address some of the things posed. Well, we'll go with San Fernando, and maybe we might have Shogunas again. But good morning, caller.
Hey, morning, Sean.
Morning.
You know, while I appreciate, just like the caller from Derby, that what the minister is trying to do, the Minister of Finance, I should say. I have to approach that with some caution. Because we have been having deficit budgets, Sean, for most of this administration's 8 years, if not all of it. And that is our worrying trend. Our borrowing seems to be, because if you look how we only measure the borrowing, when you look at our objective GDP ratio, and that has been coming down. We have to be very cautious as a country, because this money has to be paid back, and this money has to be paid back in the future generations. That ties into the diversification, which two other callers spoke about. And there was one caller in particular who put some emphasis on assistance of small enterprises, where, or she called it micro. We need to, there are a lot of them, Sean, there are a lot of them producing all kinds of products. The issue is there is a need for some cohesion and a push by the state, because a lot of these people can't afford to get this product to a state where they can be exported. But Sean, there are a lot of them, and we are not doing enough to get as a government. They are not doing enough to pull these people in and create an environment for assistance, because they need some assistance to push them to the level where we can say, these are the products that we have for export. So when we have these trade shows going out there, they can expose some of these products for exportation. Thank you, Sean. Have a good day.
Thank you, caller. I'll just say, technically, even tourism is like that. There are certain things that the industry cannot necessarily do on its own. Maybe if the industry was booming or was in a very good place, it could have borne the expense to do certain things on its own. But there's a reason why the Barbadian government, the Bajan government, spends, I think, several $100 million on marketing for Barbados a year, right? I could be wrong about that figure, but the point is they market their own, the government fits the bill on marketing the island, right? So it's an industry-wide support services, industry-wide infrastructure, industry-wide marketing. I think that's where, you were going, or at least it might have been implied with what you were saying, that yes, we could have individual players in an industry, but then now how does a government promote the development of any particular industry? We saw it with oil and gas, but we don't really see industries, whether it's agriculture or a subsector of agriculture or tourism or whatever, being pushed so that it gets the logistical, the support, the marketing support, the support services, we quick, running out of time. We have Shogunas again. Quick caller. Good morning.
acting. We cannot find the public service review and reports. And in the end, he agreed with me by saying that many recommendations are made and they are ignored. Thank you, unless you have a question. Hello?
No questions, Professor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for calling back in. I was trying to remember all the points that you made, and I knew that I was missing something that was going to be pertinent to what the follow-up caller said. So thank you for that. That should be it for all the calls there. So just want to get into a couple of things. As I was saying, yes, infrastructure. That was the way that I was trying to remember. Especially like infrastructure and different aspects of ease of doing business, right? Enough electricity, enough water, whatever your business is, especially for things like agriculture, right? A water park can't necessarily be exported, although it could be part of your tourism product, and that could still earn foreign exchange depending. But agriculture, of course, obviously needs water. Different things like that. We don't necessarily see the support. We don't see the support to help the industry get more organized. And it makes a difference. It makes a difference. We see it in Jamaican sports and obviously tourism. We see it in Barbadian tourism. So, but we have oil and gas, and that's where the bulk of the mental resources and the focus really goes to. And I'm not too sure what is done with the people in the Ministry of Tourism and the various development companies and the Division of Tourism in Tobago. I just haven't seen anything that inspires any confidence in me in that sector, nor have I necessarily seen anything in other non-energy sectors of the economy. And yes, it goes back now to the dock, as one of the callers was speaking about Carry Dock. We got the dock, and there's plans of the potential in the dock, but just having a dock doesn't mean anything. And there's this phenomenon in TNT where we have this thing where if you build it, we expect you to come. If we build the airport, more visitors somehow will magically come. If we build the hotel, more visitors will come to stay in the hotel. If we build the stadium, more sports will be had. It doesn't work that way. You have to build up the foundation of everything, and you can't just say, well, we're going to just have a thing. We're going to put Napa on the ground, and we're all of a sudden going to have a world-class performing arts theater. Where it was the implementation, the construction, the design, the equipment used, there were a lot of issues with Napa. And they still exist. That's why Queen's Hall gets a lot of business. And we see that in a lot of different areas where the plan for this industry is this one thing. This one thing is supposed to be the silver bullet. Whether it is at the time Magdalena for Tobago tourism at one time was the silver bullet. Then it was Sandals. Now it's the airport, I believe, right? The water park as well. What is your market? What is the expected demand? And with regards to agriculture, now granted, there are going to be a lot of people in government service behind the scenes, like at WASA, like the guys who actually did the work for the repairs at WASA, right? And we have to respect them for it because they keep the country moving, right? And we can't take them for granted either. They're there, and they're doing the work. What we need is, as a public, to tell the politicians and union leaders and the managers and whoever else, all the people in charge, listen, we want more of that and less of whatever we get in the public service where people could clock in and clock out. Well, not clock out, and go about and gallivant and do who knows what throughout the working day and collect a check. With regards to the call from Barataria, I think part of the problem with your water supply is just the nature of water pressure in pipes and having to build up and reach to all areas. I believe that is the explanation. They were also adding water slowly into the system, so it was at 30%, I think, a couple of days ago over the weekend. I can't fully remember the timeline, but there was somewhat of an explanation. It does seem as though, however, that if you can't get water now on Tuesday, almost a week from the initial start of the incident, or a week from the start of the incident, and a few days removed from the repairs. There are questions there. I don't know if this is a case where WASA, if you could call in to find out what's going on, or if they would have a press release in case this is more widespread. A lot more to say. Can't answer everything. I'll just close with the desalination plant, private desalination plant, because one of the callers said, well, you might need approval for that from the AMA, potentially from WASA or other parts of the government. I get that. I understand that. One would hope, because the successes we actually see, the practical successes in tourism, is mostly private driven, in my opinion, from what I've seen. Right? When the Cocoa Reef opened, that was private driven. You know, the various industries, the entertainment, the activities provided, it's mostly private driven. The marketing that we have is mostly private driven. So I would hope that while I'm saying, or while I have said in the last 10 minutes that we need government to really help with certain industry-wide issues and certain support services that only the government technically could provide, or at least is in a position now to provide, I would hope that the government will support initiatives by private individuals that will ease the burden of things like our public utilities and infrastructure, right? I would not make it too difficult. I'm not saying it has to be automatic, but it's just one more aspect of ease of doing business, an ongoing clarion call from the business community that we should look at. Because the calls that we don't hear from the micro businessmen that can't get their small and micro businesses started, when people want to be an entrepreneur and want to potentially go and provide something of themselves, and paperwork is potentially what's holding them back, not the willingness to try. And trying is what we need to make today a good day. So you go make it a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
I'm Andy Johnson, and you're watching WESN, the content capital.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
Did you tell your hubby about it, first of all?
I did.
When you were telling him, did you think that he was going to think differently of you or less of you?
I thought exactly that.
In case you've missed it, it's an encore of Nicole Larson Live. Relive some of the riveting experiences of everyday people who candidly shared with me their stories, life challenges, stories of hope, and eventual victories.
Because he is not like man, because he is the God. It is a promise that we can hold on to.
The report came back that she had two properly...
Eric, behave yourself, no man.
Two properly working kidneys.
An encore of Nicole Larson Live, living in victory every day. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. and Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. on WESN.
Is it
politics? What is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andre.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the right and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
We are WESN, the premier platform for Caribbean content. WESN, covering West, East, South, and North. WESN, we entertainment, sports, and news. WESN, available on Greendot 7, Amplia 118, Airlink 17, Bmobile 107, Digicel 21, ICNTT 105, and Flow 110. Connect with us at WESNCC or stream online at www.wesncc.com. WESN, your premier platform for Caribbean content.
It doesn't necessarily lead to the change we want to see on the ground.
Child labor has been getting a lot of attention, and rightly so. There are still thousands of children on the artisanal sites in Lualaba. But many NGOs believe that this phenomenon has overshadowed other problems caused by industrial mining, which due diligence is struggling to address. These include forced displacement of populations without proper compensation, pollution, and finally, corruption. The plundering of Congolese mineral resources is not new. For more than 60 years, colonial Belgium extracted vast wealth here. After the Congo's independence in 1960, a new form of predation was established. The dictator Mobutu and his relatives drew billions from the assets of Gécamine, the state-owned mining company. When Laurent Désiré Kabila overthrew Mobutu in 1997, the bankrupt country plunged back into war. After his assassination, his son Joseph Kabila succeeded him. He signed peace deals and revived the mining sector to refill the state coffers. But Gécamine was left in ruins.
In 2002, we all noticed that Gécamine had gone bankrupt, just as the Congolese state had also gone bankrupt, economically and in other ways. And the World Bank initiated or advised the Congolese state to make reforms because they said you have the minerals, but you do not have the means to make the sector reliable. You have to open up the multinationals. The mining operators came. The multinationals came to the Congo, like Glencore, First Quantum. Big ones have come here. They did not come for the development of the people. They came to do business.
To understand the cobalt sector today, you have to go back in time. You have to look at how the companies that are present today acquired the mining concessions, especially the cobalt concessions. And what we can see is that there was a really decisive, crucial role played by an Israeli businessman named Dan Gertler, who in fact played the role of intermediary between the multinationals who were looking for these concessions rich in copper and cobalt on the one hand, and on the other hand, the Congolese politicians who had the power to decide on the granting of these concessions. What happened was that the state company instead made contracts, what we call amicable agreements, contracts directly with this Israeli businessman, who was very much connected to Joseph Kabila, very close to the former president of the DRC, and sold these concessions at very low prices.
As soon as he took power in 2001, Joseph Kabila made Dan Gertler his most trusted man. Gertler landed in Congo with new money at a time when the country was in dire need of it. He became the key to Western companies' access to Kabila. In 2007, the world leader in commodities trading, Glencore, called on him to acquire the best deposits. They became co-shareholders in Mutanda Mining, the largest cobalt mine in the world. Glencore also advanced millions of dollars to Gertler in exchange for his mediation with Kinshasa for another mining contract. Once revealed in the press, this transaction drew the attention of the American authorities. They suspect the businessmen of having bribed the Kabila regime in several projects, some of which even involved an American investment fund. In total, the NGOs estimate that the Congolese state has lost more than $1 billion in these transactions. Trouble then began for Gertler.
And so, as a result of this, he was placed under the sanctions. And other actors were also placed, certain high officers of the Kabila regime, and others as well, but certainly he is the largest was the largest target in terms of value of the assets he controlled.
To get back into the Congolese game, the U.S. has targeted Dan Gertler to push Kabila out. They sued Glencore, which is also under investigation in the UK and Switzerland. In 2022, Glencore announced it was setting aside $1.5 billion to settle its legal cases. How do manufacturers like Umicore, who buy cobalt from the Swiss giant, position themselves?
If there is a conviction, we would need to assess what is happening. We will do our own assessment as well. If a judge finds that a party is guilty, we will look into it and then make our decision, of course. Yeah. Based on the legal outcome.
For us, it's quite disappointing. It's like if you say a company that mines or buys, that buys artisanal ore, that was made with child labor on site. You say yes, but in fact, the company has not been convicted for using children, and therefore there is no problem. You see, it's a bit like that for child labor in the mines. You would never use that argument. They haven't been convicted, so there's no problem. Apparently, for corruption, as long as you are not convicted, there is no problem.
It is clear to us that corruption is not a victimless crime. And so often that's how it's portrayed. It is money passing hands between middlemen and corrupt elite officials. But of course, at the end of that chain are frequently ordinary citizens who suffer quite dramatically as a result of the corruption. And the corruption around the metal coal mine was no exception.
The metal coal mine is made up of the Kolwezi mine waste piled up for miles during Belgian colonial exploitation. It is in fact one of the richest sites in the copper belt. In the early 2000s, the Canadian company First Quantum obtained the rights to exploit them. It was the deal of the century. These piles of waste are said to contain another 300,000 tons of cobalt. That makes them worth $20 billion. But suddenly, the Kabila regime withdrew the mining license from First Quantum.
We now know from court documents and court records what happened. And what occurred is that the mining license had been stripped through the assistance of a company owned by Dan Gertler, who saw this as a very profitable mine. He held it for a short period of time and then flipped it to a large multinational mining company, then called Eurasian Natural Resources Corporation, today called Eurasian Resources Group, or ERG. And that company owns the mine today, but we know through court records it was a mine that was corrupted away by Dan Gertler, bribing Congolese officials, including Congolese judges, in order to obtain the mining permit.
The Kazakh group Eurasian Resources Group, through its subsidiary Metal Coal, is finishing the construction of the plant and operating the site. Despite Metal Coal's commitments, the 700 employees laid off by First Quantum will not be rehired or compensated.
But is this sand here?
It's not sand, it's waste.
It's the waste from the ore?
Yes, yes, it's ore. You can see, it's shining.
Projects like the Metal Call are not ethical for us. This is why we wanted to take legal action. It's an appeal to the collective conscience, that is to say, of all the stakeholders, the final consumers, the international NGOs, the multinationals. We cannot be satisfied with them consuming our cobalt and exploiting us at the same time, without looking at the living conditions of the populations that take part in the extraction of these minerals. I hope that through this cause, through this commitment, we will have sensitized all the other stakeholders on the real problems that plague the cobalt mining sector, rather than focusing on the issue of children in the mines. I do not deny that it is a problem, but it is not the biggest problem of the sector.
Hapa shughuli tribunal. Munachunga nini?
Arranger le dossier. Ile makuta barikatalaka chimi jinga ule baturipe makuta yetu diku wanaanza kutulipa na 600 francs. Ile 600,000 wanaanza kutukabri. Eske ndio wanalipaka pension ya mtu.
Kajiranzo nileta makuta kuripia kwa batoto kumasomo, mi mwenyewe hospital, mi shina na hospital. Seke ni mangaiko ya nguvu. Iranza kunisaidia ako na kupeleka ko dimu kumisa. Mi nashindwa na kupeleka dimu. Tapata kaji wapi mi shina.
At that time when we worked, we had access to medical care. We earned the wages to pay for schooling for our children. But suddenly, when the work stopped, my daughter suffered. So I did everything I could to go to the hospital where we were treated. I was turned away. You have no right to come here. So on the way back, she died. And the boy died after a year. My daughter is here. Her name was Martha.
Martha?
Yes. She was suffering from the disease of malaria. He is here.
What was his name?
His name was René.
René?
Yes.
And what happened to him?
He had malaria and yellow fever. He also died. He was 8 years old.
Welcome, everyone, to our radio television Manika program. We are going to talk about the ecosystem. What impact does mining have on the surrounding population? And for that, we have Professor Banza, toxicologist and professor at the University of Lubumbashi. Professor, first tell us what your mission was here in Kolwezi.
We started with the assessment of the levels of contamination of the ecosystems of the populations. That is to say, what are the levels of contamination of the waterways, the levels of contamination of the fish that are consumed, and that are in the waterways that are contaminated, and that also affect the consumers. The levels of human contamination from the consumption of fish, from the inhalation of dust, and from the contamination of the environment in which we are living.
Professor Celestine Banza has been investigating environmental and health impacts of mining in the Congo for the past 15 years alongside NGOs, an area where polluting companies apply incomplete due diligence.
So the sulfuric acid has leaked from here until there in the Luilu River.
Which company is behind this ecological disaster?
First, it's the KCC company, which belongs to Glencore. This foam here is the lime. When they see that the basin is full, they open this pipe. This is what causes the change in the color of the water, but also the foam that comes from the lime that they are pouring into the basin.
When they put lime in to increase the acidity and keep the pH above 7. But I don't think they solved the problem because the toxic metals, the acid persists. Look at the appearance of the water and even the soils. The sedimentation sludge, the color of which shows that there is still a very serious pollution problem. And so the problem is very, very important, especially since this river flows into the Congo River. This is one of the most important rivers in Africa. It feeds a sizable part of our country.
Under pressure from NGOs, Glencore finally acknowledged the sulfuric acid leaks, but it denied any impact on the surrounding ponds. Paradoxically, the company has begun to compensate victims and to start rehabilitating the fish ponds. In 2018, Professor Banza and his team found very high cobalt levels in the blood and urine of the Kolwezi small-scale miners. Their article, published by the prestigious group Nature, showed changes of the DNA of children exposed to mineral dust, an indication of a high risk of cancer in the future. Now, he is conducting tests on 100 diggers in the pits. They are exposed to radon, a radioactive and carcinogenic gas emitted from the uranium also present in the rock.
If we don't manage the pollution properly, as it has been done so far, it will become a problem. It will be a problem because the rivers will be almost destroyed. Most of the rivers in the province of Grand Katanga, for example, are already hit by pollution. And not only here in Katanga. We have seen this in Kivu. The same thing is almost all over the country. Where there is extraction of mineral resources, there are still problems. So if we're not careful, the country risks an ecological and toxicological scandal.
In the Congo, Felix Tshisekedi succeeded Kabila in 2018. He had promised the renegotiation of mining contracts. But the process drags on, and the population still does not benefit from the wealth of their own country. In the meantime, Congolese minerals and those from around the world will continue to feed the hundreds of millions of electric cars planned for our roads. But all over the world, voices are being raised. Activists, lawyers, and scientists are investigating and getting organized against the mining industry. The political world can no longer ignore their voices.
The best of culture every day on France 24, with exclusive interviews with the most talked about people in entertainment. Encore's Eve Jackson and Olivia Salazar-Winspear bring you the latest from the world of art and entertainment. Our critics Marjorie Hash and Florence Villeminot speak to the biggest names in music, and Lisa Nesselson and Deeptika Laurent share the newest must-see films and TV series.
Join us every day for the latest from the world of arts and culture on Encore.
WESN.
Good day and welcome to this week's episode of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. I am your host, Rondell Donowa, attorney at law. Once again, I'm happy to bring the law and you. Of course, you can stream us on WESN CC as well as our traditional media and our podcast, Strictly Legal with Rondell Donowa. Of course, we're excited again. I have a guest in studio today and we are going to speak about the safe community and residential safety tips and how the law applies to what is reasonable for us and in terms of how you protect your community and your home. Of course, you know, there has been a lot of recent aspects of criminal activities in this country where it results in home invasion with respect to the criminal element. And we have seen that as a result of this type of criminal activity in our homes, it has affected us economically, personally, and of course mentally. And we are now required to invest in a lot of additional security measures, such as CCTV, ensuring that you have proper, your perimeter of your home is properly secured for the fear that, or for the safety rather, of your loved ones. And however, we must not, of course, bow to negative pressure. Rather, like anything else, we must make the necessary adjustments to put things in place to deter, of course, criminals and criminal activities. And of course, I have a guest in studio today who is a former police officer as well as he's now an attorney at law by profession. His name is Mr. Kelvin Siharak, my apologies, with 3 years called to the bar in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, prior to becoming attorney at law, as I said, he was an officer of the law for approximately 10 years. And during this time of service in the TTPS, he acquired practical experiences in the court system, prosecuting matters as a complainant, and experience in dealing with members of the public who were victims of serious crime as an investigator at the CID. Now, these years of experience has equipped Mr. Siharak to pursue his studies in law and transition into private practice, which he proudly continues his service to his country as an attorney at law, having a distinctive policing background. And of course, the word distinctive is very important because, as you know, public perception of policing can be a bit skewed, but of course, we always have good ones there. So of course, in studio, I will no longer stick, as they say, and I would welcome now Mr. Siharak on set. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Ronald, for having me on your show. Good morning to you, good morning to your viewers, and for allowing me the opportunity to share with members of the public safety tips in our residence and in our communities, and of course, for us to engage in that discussion surrounding self-defense and how it is the law applies to householders. Yes,
I am really happy that you took up on this invitation to be here because of course we are in a very dark space in our country, and yes, we have the justice system, yes, we have the policing system. I note as a former police officer, you have now transitioned to be an attorney. Now tell us, a bit before we get into the nitty-gritty, how was that experience, or what propelled you to transition from one career being a prosecutor, let's say as a complainant, to now, I assume that you are defending, well, obviously you are defending, persons accused, or rather.
It's very ironical because being an officer, I would have served from the age of 18 years after high school, and being a young officer coming along in the police service, usually the senior officers will give the junior officers the leeway to charge and go before the court. And as a result of this, me having worked at the Besson Street Police Station, one of the areas where it is, policing is very tactical and complex, I would have had the opportunity, obviously, to do several matters before the court, give evidence, subject myself to cross-examination, and so on. And as a result of that experience, over the years, it would have allowed me to gain a practical knowledge of the law from a policing background. And I decided to take up the studies of law, and 5 years later, I became a qualified attorney at law. So now, having that practical knowledge and understanding, I'm able to marry it with the theory of law and create that connection towards continuing to serve members of the public and our country.
That is great, and I'm happy that you give that overview. And of course, before we get into the crux of the matter, I would like to take a break. You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN. We'll be right back.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
The perfect mix of news, current affairs, talk, debate, mature discussions, comedy and sports. Only at WESN, the content capital.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back to Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. I'm with my host, Mr. Kelvin Siharak, and we are speaking about community, basically tips and residential tips for crime prevention. And of course, before you were giving us an overview of your background, etc. Now, in many communities, there are what you call a lot of community groups, right? A lot of watch groups, etc. And of course, this is designed really to assist in the community looking out for each other as a watchdog to prevent crime. Now, obviously, as a former officer, as well as as your experience, can you just go into detail as to the need or the importance of community type watch groups, and of course, what can they do further to assist in sort of crime prevention?
Well, Ronald, I'm sure that you would agree with me. Presently, we are faced with an upsurge in home invasions in Trinidad and Tobago. Just yesterday evening, I was looking at a video online where it was a lady was driving into her home, opening her remote control gate, and entering into her home. And after she closed the gate, the perpetrator jumped the wall, didn't even enter while the gate was open, jumped the wall, drew for his tool of trade, firearm, and apparently engaged the householder, and then exited. And then up to most recently, last night in Tobago, elderly gentleman, there was an intruder at his door knocking, and when he went to answer it, he was shot and killed. So there has been an upsurge, and as you had said earlier, the economic effects as well as the psychological effects is dominating residents at this point in time in our country, and it has far-reaching circumstances in terms of the level of trauma that we have to deal with. May it be we are victims of a home invasion or crime, or we are just looking at these videos or reading these articles. I am sure that it will have some sort of traumatical effect on our minds.
But and the thing is, we are so now desensitized to crime. Like, for instance, anytime you see crime news, like I try not to look at it because every day is something. And of course, we become so desensitized that if you see a murder, it's a next murder, right? There's no emotion. People are just going about their daily lives because what can you do again, right? And of course, we've seen all these CCTV images from homes, right, where persons have their property secure. They have automatic gates. They have CCTV cameras. I mean, thankfully, the person in question yesterday had dogs.
Right.
So the dogs rushed the individual, which was a good, obviously that's a good thing, and you can get into detail as to, yes, we have all these things, but is it enough in terms of securing yourself and your property from, let's say, home invasion, etc.?
Most certainly, and I think most communities and persons would have already started the initiative of implementing safety tips and use of the air horns, right? We have seen how effective this can be in certain communities. However, there are things which we can reinforce to reassure the members of the public that the continuous assessment of your home, the exterior structure, the interior structure, your vehicles, your neighbors, your community, the locality that you live in, we can reinforce these tips so that persons and members of the public are conscious of how it is they provide layers of security to deter and prepare for a home invasion if it is the situation may arise.
So let's start with the protection of your structure, of your exterior, of your structure. Give us some tips as to how can homeowners or persons who are renting or whomever can secure from at least the exterior point of view going up to the interior, etc.
What I believe is that we must look at it from first and foremost the locality, because some persons may live in rural areas, others may live in urban and suburban areas. Now, in your rural areas, we know that your neighbor might be a mile or a quarter mile away, and it is heavily forested, or depending on the use of the land, may it be agricultural use or the rearing of livestock, there may not be any perimeter fence. So usually the structures might be open. It might consist of a wooden structure, let's say living close to the coastline, or it might be partly wooden or partly concrete or concrete. And this is distinguished as opposed to persons living in urban, suburban areas. We have the townhouses, the duplex, and the residential homes, upstairs and downstairs structures in communities where, in some instances, private residents would have that opportunity to fence their area. So taking a look at the external components of your home and its structure is very important based on the locality where you live. And I say this because if it is you are to do an assessment to put layers of security measures in place to deter or prepare for a home invasion, I believe that you must first start from the point of view of looking into your home. So stand on your road and just as the intruder or perpetrator would do, look into your home and look at the external components of your home. So if it is you can fence your home, you make sure that your fencing system is properly secured, there are no gaps or the walls are at a certain height, and you have the spikes or the barbed wire.
I'm happy you mentioned, just pause a bit, I'm happy you mentioned that your walls at a certain height. But of course, you know, we have town country rules which states that your front wall has to be, I think, it's 6 feet high and the side is 8 feet high. But then obviously persons are jumping over those walls.
Most certainly.
Right? And of course, how do you now stick within the ambit of the rules and regulations governing construction versus protecting yourself? Because I've seen basically dungeons. People have secured their homes like dungeons for fear to ensure that there's no gaps or heights, right? The height is 12 to 12 feet high, and then they have a covering over, right? Because at the end of the day, if probably they are not secured by virtue of the state, they have to do themselves.
Yes, so most certainly that will be subject, obviously, to planning approvals and the draft plans that you would submit to Town and Country and Regional Corporation for approvals. And if it is you are so approved to erect such a large wall, if the case may be. But in preparing your home to deter intruders, it is very important that that security fence, that additional level of protection is there around your perimeter of your home, if it is you can. We know in some instances persons may be living in state homes, for example the AGC homes, and they will require permission to do certain renovations. If it is they were required to construct a fence, or in some instances they may not be able to construct a fence. So now you have to make that adjustment and look at what else you can do to implement that level of safety and security to deter or prepare for a home invasion. Now let's get back to the external aspect of the home. We look at the installation of lights or the motion sensors, lights at night, so that you keep the perimeter of your home well illuminated. It is advisable that you do not keep any objects around the perimeter of your home, especially if it is you are working or your household is a working household, and for the majority of the week you are away from your home. you would want to store these things in a safe place so that these objects are not used to break into your home and gain entry. Also, it is advisable, and I'm sure everyone would agree, to invest in that CCTV camera system, yes, alarms and monitoring, motion sensors. That gives you a sense of peace of mind, as well as it puts you in that strategic advantage of being able to see if it is an intruder enters your premises and that motion sensor camera takes it up, you know what is the next step that you are required to do. So the CCTV cameras are always a means of having that advantage over the intruder.
And of course, there are other issues where CCTV cameras are not cheap, yes, right? And I know the government would have had a certain incentives in terms of VAT, customs duty exemptions for importing now CCTV cameras